You're Puerto Rican.
All right.
Where's our class? Where's my buddy?
Aaron is a reprobate. That's just to be official with it. He's being a reprobate. So.
Oh, please, that's some
Okay,
heavy
yeah.
stuff.
So we're gonna get started here in a minute. Let me turn this down. All right, cool.
Yeah,
All right.
she's good.
Are we gonna focus on the class now, Johnny? Are we gonna?
Oh, she's gonna be so hyper.
What is it?
She'll be wanting to dance in the Holy Ghost, and she's not anointed like she was Sunday.
It's kind of like almost like a cheesecake, like for Americans.
Yeah.
It's
All right.
so good.
All right.
Okay, before I forget, Sunday, you were the most anointed I've ever heard you sing. You weren't, listen, you just wasn't singing. You was doing spiritual warfare. You really were.
Yeah,
And so my advice to you is keep pressing in like that.
I love
I mean,
that.
he'll tell you, when you press in like
Yeah,
that,
that's good stuff.
It felt
more
different.
anointed, more anointed.
Oh yeah.
And what's going to happen when you do that warfare, people's going to get free in the congregation.
Yep.
I love that.
That's all praise and worship.
Thank you. Yeah, I had someone come up to me and start crying,
Oh.
and it was a man.
Awesome.
Helen,
And I was like, I don't know. I sat down after that song. I just started speaking in tongues. I'm like, I don't know what was going on. I was like shaking.
it's
felt-
because you weren't just doing a performance. You wasn't doing just a song. You were doing spiritual warfare. I mean, it was totally all God.
Amen.
Were you there?
Yep.
Yep, that's
Yeah, I
good.
didn't know he was good.
Oh,
This is the first time I see anything else about music.
She can't
they forced
sing.
me to.
Yeah, well, it's the problem is her brother-in-law. It's
And
it's the whole thing.
I can never say her name correctly. Caitlin?
Kaylin.
Kaylin.
No T.
Yeah,
No
she-
T.
No T in it. Kaylin. Yeah.
Caitlin, okay.
Yep.
Now,
We are so blessed.
explain it. She was also very, very good.
Yeah.
So good. Jesus.
God has
And
blessed
She's
us.
kind of like Matthew,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he was
it's just-
upstairs.
Yeah. Well.
And she looked right at him when she was singing.
I thought she knew she was there, but okay.
I know you guys.
Yeah, we gotta get going here. So,
It's only 2 minutes after. That class.
well, let's talk about the class here and what we're doing, how we're doing, and all that fun stuff. Let's talk about the assignments. This did not advance like it's supposed to. Okay. So again, we're on a flexible schedule. So last week's due dates I moved up 1 week up to the 13th. If there's any problems with that, let me know. This week the X2 application paper is due. That's just kind of taking all the concepts from the book, kind of making, and it's a theory, and you can apply it to a church context, a ministry context, and just kind of write something out, kind of a strategy, a thought about that. There's a whole rubric that's in your syllabus to kind of what we're looking for grading wise. Please follow that. You know, I remember doing this. Taking classes, now I'm teaching this and doing. I never used rubrics before, but they're very, very. When I did my master's, there was a big thing. So I was okay. I looked at them, paid attention to them, and it made the profs real happy. Now now as the guy doing it, man, it makes it so much easier. Just lays it out, do this, and you get points. If you don't do that, you don't get points. So it's pretty. I think it's pretty clear. And so just pay attention to that as you finish that up.
So we're creating.
A theoretical what would be like if you would like take those. If you take the Acts 2 book and apply it in the context of a local church, a theoretical church, your current ministry, how would that look?
How detailed? I mean, it's only
Well, that's got to be a minimum of 1,000 words, so don't, but you don't want to write a novel either, so. So look at the rubric and think it through, and whatever, work it through
You want us
that.
to follow
The book is the best way to follow, a structure to follow, and then hitting those points, those of grow and worship and evangelism and all those things. Those are all key points of that. And just be real clear about it. And then again, I'm not looking for, you can use Lakeside, you can say some theoretical, you can use your ministry in the context of ministry, because it does apply, very much does apply to any ministry that you do. But you have to kind of do that application and think it through and give me a report on that.
Could
Good.
they do one like ministry they would like to see?
Yeah, it's a theoretical, sure. Project it out, whatever. So however you want to do it. Let me ask a question. Do we need to, and then the other two students that are enrolled aren't here to answer this question, which I don't know where Jacob. Not here. He's not here, so I don't know where he's at. So I don't know what happened. So no, he's not golfing. I don't know what happened with him. So no. He's out of town. He is out of town. I knew he was going to be out of town. His family had a scheduled vacation all bad before we signed up for class. He'll be watching online. So I got two guys. I forgot all about that. I forgot. That's in the head. That's where he's at. So hello. So we'll be doing that online. If we need to now at this point, I'm trying to see, and again, I'm going by what I'm seeing as far as assignments being turned in. Stuff getting done. I may extend this week's assignments from the week, but I don't want to drag it out too much. So, we'll kind of see how it goes. But we'll be flexible with that. Okay. Again, the big goal is by the end of the class, everything's got to be done, turned in to make Trinity happy. So that's the goal. So that's the way we got to do it. Okay. So with all that said and done, let's talk about managing conflict in the context of local church. Okay. So biggest thing. Now, this is a funny part. Change causes conflict. No matter what you do or how you do it or where you do it, change causes conflict. Now, the problem is this, is that the gospel itself causes conflict. If it's done right, Luke 7:3, and blessed is the one who is not offended by me. Acts 4, and as they were speaking to the people, the priests and the captain of the temple, and the Sadducees came upon them, greatly annoyed. They were ticked off. Sometimes when you do the work of the church, you annoy people. In the church, outside the church, in the community, co-workers, family. You tick them off. Romans 14, as one who is weak in faith, welcome him, but do not quarrel over opinions. Oh boy, that's a neat idea. One person believes he may eat anything, while the weak person eats only vegetables. Let the one who eats despise the one who abstains, and let the one who abstain pass judgment on the other one who eats. For God has welcomed him. Who are you to pass judgment on the servant of another? It is before his own master that he stands and falls, and he will be upheld. For the Lord is able to make him stand. One person seems one day is better than another, while another seems all days alike. Each one should be fully convinced in his own mind. There's a lot of validity that there's ideas for opinions, but when you do stuff in ministry, we're really going to dig into this and how it works out and here's some application stuff. It's a biblical concept. It's not a weird idea, but we kind of want to gloss over it. We don't want to talk about, sometimes you tick people off. Sometimes you'll annoy people. But I've annoyed people. I know you guys are surprised by that, but that's happened. And the unique thing is, though, is that conflict is the crucible for deeper growth. I think I shared the story. I met with Ralph Neighbor, who was like one of the big gurus of cell groups in North America. And he was sharing with us about, because he says, the biggest problem when churches because cell group structure is a big change for most North American churches. It causes lots of conflict because it's a big change. And he goes, he loved the change. Because when you change something, you cause conflict. When you deal with conflict, you deal with core issues of people. You find out there's, those bitter roots and those bad fruits pop up. And in that conflict, you kind of work through who you really are, hopefully, and you become more Christ-like and less more of yourself. There's a power in that. When you don't have a lot of bumping against each other, you got to kind of wonder, what are we doing? Because if we're going by our own nature, well, what's your nature? Huh? And that would be a good, godly nature or a what nature? Fleshly nature. And that's what Christ wants to grow in us. And so walking through that creates deeper growth. It's true in relationships. It's true in church. And to be annoyed, okay, why does it annoy you? What's going on? Why does it cause such an issue? When I learned a lot about this. Some of the stuff I'm sharing with you guys tonight comes from when I was from experience where I worked with I can't remember his first name, Pastor Forner. My brain went stupid. But he was the pastor. I was on church in Kenosha for a few years. The senior pastor left, and a new guy came in. New guy came in from Ohio, or no, Pennsylvania. He's been pastor in Pennsylvania, and he was a good pastor. It's kind of neat because he grew up where I grew up. He grew up in Northwest Indiana. He worked in the steel mills. He was going to college, and no, a few years older than me. He's now 80, so he's about 25, 30 years older than me. 27 years older than me. So a little bit older than me, but we understood each other. We got along really well. He was probably one of the best senior pastors I worked with because we got along so well. Well, one of the things that he did, and his experience was this. He took over a church in Pennsylvania. No, not Pennsylvania. Yeah, that's Pennsylvania. And he pastored a church, and it was like a really booming church. But it was now in the Assemblies of God, we'll talk about this later on in AG Polity. The Assemblies of God, you have districts. Okay, most think of people in districts as states. That's not necessarily true. Because, we have a Michigan district, right? But the UP is not part of our district. They're part of Wisconsin, North Michigan is a district itself. But in the AG, you have the districts, but then there's still, to this day, kind of cultural districts. There's a Hispanic district, an Italian district. There was a Swedish district based upon the language and culture that they lived in. So he went to a church that was part of an Italian district that wanted to become more of a normal, more English American church. So they're kind of bridging over. So he went in to be the pastor of this church. He was probably at that time maybe 30-something, 40-something, a little bit on the young side. Went into this church and started, and he was, preaching. He himself was, again, about 35, 40 years of age, attracting a lot of young families and young people, and it was just booming. It was going really, really great. Well, about 3 years into it, the church literally tripled in size. It went from like 150 to 450 people, and they're doing building programs, and it was just clipping. What happened was he's clipping along, and he gets called in to the board for a meeting. He's like, okay, what's going on? And they said, we got a problem. He's like, okay, what's the problem? We don't like what's going on with the church, the vision of the church. He's like, well, we've like tripled in size in like 3 or 4 years. What's the problem? We just don't think that's what God wants us to do. What happened was he grew that church with all these new people, but the older people saw a lot of change, and they didn't like it. And those older people were the ones that funded ministries, that sat on the boards. And basically, he lost that church. They said they went to this huge conflict and just beat the living out of them. Not physically, but that whole pastoral rejection, the whole thing. And he was just totally like, what happened here? So he went to the district, to help him find another church in a different area, another city in the Pennsylvania district, and he started pastoring that church and did really well. But in that, he kind of sat back and thought, what in the world happened? Why did this happen? So he spent several years looking at churches, growth, development, conflict in church, and why they happen. And so out of that, he developed he did this whole lecture thing. So what he would do, he was a mediation, he was a church nonprofit mediation, legit, certified mediation specialist. So he would get called from different churches all across the country to come and do this. He'd do a weekend, 2 weekends with them. And he would do a whole consulting thing, would do this whole process with them, and then help them figure, okay, what you guys got to do? You guys either got to, what you can do to fix this, or how you guys can divide and separate, because there's a big conflict. So he'd do it all the time. It's kind of funny because if they were in the Midwest, he was also a pilot, a hobby pilot. So he'd get in little 2-seater planes, and he'd hop on one of those planes, fly to one of those places, and he'd take me with him. So I get to go travel with him, which is cool. Until he sneezed one time when he was trying to fly a plane and took a big dip. That was a whole different experience. So he didn't let the flying experience. He let me fly the plane. I go, sure. So I'm steering. I'm like, yeah, I'm feeling pretty hot stuff, man. I'm flying a plane. Yeah. He goes, by the way, my 9-year-old, my daughter's 9. She could do this pretty good to herself. I go, thanks a lot, buddy. So he goes, it's just steering. I just know what to do. Just steady it. Know where to point the sucker. And I went through a couple times. It was a lot of fun. And he learned all this stuff. And so he did this whole, he would do training on it and all that stuff, which I learned a lot of it from that. And then one of the consultations he did was a church down in Texas. There's a church, and there's a common experience that he would deal with. They had a long-term pastor of over probably 10 years or more, 20 plus years is pretty typical. He left that ministry, retired, died, whatever. In that place, the pastor died. Okay, he was a pastor of the church, died while he was still pastor. He did a 5-minute devotional on the local TV stations for like 20 years. So he was well known in the community. Coffee with Pastor Dabney, and I was there, and so he died. I mean, they have like his last broadcast. He's like in his deathbed, radioing into the guy that's hosting the show. There's a little thing that took over for him, and he died like 2 weeks later. Everybody community came out. It was a big deal. So he passes away, and they have a new guy come in. Well, the new guy wasn't Pastor Daphne. And he tried to do different things, and people bucked him, and he called for a congregational vote, a confidence vote. Which in the churches you can say, I want to get a confidence vote. And sometimes, if you can ask for it, sometimes they do it by mandate. It depends on your constitution and bylaws. It's small things they put in there. Sometimes you got to have a 50%. Sometimes you got to have 75%, whatever. And he didn't have no. They had no. He just asked for it, a confidence vote at a business meeting. So they did a confidence vote. He got 74% of the vote. And he quit. In the meeting, said, I quit. And walked out. This is a church of like 1,000. The associate pastor, worship pastor, walked out right after. I mean, meeting, vote, that's what it was. They get pastors what it is. Okay, thank you very much, I quit. I resign. See ya. Walks out, senior associate, worship pastor says, we're gone too. And then after that, left the church. So they call my senior pastor, Pastor Foreign, help us figure out how we can do this. They begged him to be the senior pastor. So he went down there and said, okay, finally did it. And then he asked me to come down and be on staff with him. So that's when we ended up in Texas. So we went through this whole thing of the people. You walk into a cantankerous position, you find out a lot about people and how to transition them and the process to walk through that. It's difficult work. But leadership and ministry, the principles that are true there are true in all situations. So we're going to talk about those a little bit, okay? All righty. So concept number 1 is what I call the 4 berry buckets. 4 berry buckets, okay? I've had this used in different structures and frames and ideas and so forth, but if you understand a congregation or a group you minister to, it can be a class, small group. It can be a youth ministry, kids ministries. It doesn't make a difference. If you understand how people kind of fit in this and how they relate to you as the leader, it saves you a whole lot of headache. Okay? So in the 4 berry buckets, so there's kind of 4 categories. Category number 1 is the older. You have newcomers and you have long-termers. So newcomers at the top. Long-termers are on the bottom. Now, so a newcomer or long-termer is based upon when the leader arrives. So his tenure in the ministry. So if I'm a new pastor going into a new church, everyone before me is a long-termer. And then it goes by the age of that person. They're younger than you or older than you. Their view of the leader varies. So so that's kind of, because you got 2 opposites. You have the old long-termer. They're the senior former bearers. Okay, they've been there for a long time. They often view the pastor or ministry leader as a hireling, like a better term. Okay, I'm going to do my description. Okay, senior members. The hardest people to lead. They're older than you always. Although they may belong to the group that called you to lead the church, that's not what they really want you to do. Rather, they probably think they hired you to stand in their pulpit, to preach, to lead the worship service, to preach, to help them raise their budget, to handle weddings, funerals, and visit them in the hospital. You're kind of a chaplain type of thing. In short, they frequently view the pastor as a chaplain or hired hand, or they have a long history of having led different initiatives in the church. They have a long story in what they've done. They've helped build the church literally brick by brick. They paid the bills. They have a lot of investment in the ministry that was before you. And, for example, like a youth ministry is kind of funny. Okay, you're the youth pastor. Okay, you're the youth pastor. Okay, great. The old timers, long terms before you, are typically the parents of the kids. Okay, and you go, hey, let's talk about this. And they go, okay, and you say, you know what? I think as a youth pastor, of speaking to someone that's maybe 40, 50 years old, and those are parents of your teens, and you say, I think this is what you ought to do with your kids. How much validity do you have? They go, well, that's a nice thought, but wait till you get some ankle biters, or wait till you have some teenagers rolling your eyes at you all the time.
Exactly.
Whatever context. There's this attitude, I've been there, done there, got the t-shirt. What else you got for me, kid? Okay. Is that, it's just nature of the beast. What happens with that? Now, the opposite of that group is the young newcomers. Now, the young newcomers, they're the best because or young junior newberries. You can call them young newcomers, junior newberries, different titles. The easiest people to lead are the junior newberries. They're younger than you, and they come to the church after you. Therefore, they tend to make your world about life experiences. You're probably ahead of them. They like your wisdom, your insight. And they think you're all that in a bag of chips. They almost have no choice but to be influenced by you. Junior newberries perceive you as the leader or even as a commanding officer. And again, where the older senior ones view you as a hireling, chaplain, they think you're the boss and bag of chips and everything there is to it. And they probably don't even have a clue that a board exists. An elders exist. They don't care. In most cases, all you need for them is for you to just follow is announce where you're going, and they will just go, and they'll lead the charge. They'll pick it up, and they'll run. And typically it's 10 to 15 years younger than you will be they'll follow way more easier. Okay. It's easier to and when you like going back to Pastor Horner's church, where he grew his church totally. That's what happened was the power shifted from the senior Italian families because what happened, they got outnumbered. And they got and he goes, you can also see if I kind of thought about it. Those 2/3 of the church outgave them, and when they started getting seats on the board, that's when it became a problem. And so and he didn't have no clue what was going on, but that's what happened, and the people feel threatened. They shouldn't feel that way. There's always stories behind it. Don't be quick to judge. Don't be quick to judge. Judgment is a bad mentality to get into. Judgment will lead you to bitterness in ministry. In any context. You got to really check. You got to check. What did Jesus say about judging others? You may have a right to. Okay, yeah, but it doesn't change what Jesus teaches. Let's get biblical about it. When you start judging, it will lead to bitterness.
He tells us not to.
Mm-hmm.
Lest we be judged.
Should be judged.
He tells us to judge ourselves.
Right.
If we judge ourselves, then we will not be judged.
Right. If we act in love and grace to ourselves, we act toward love and grace to others.
Going back to that church, for me, to looking from the outside, I see immaturity in the older group.
That may be true.
If you have been in a church that long, and you can't see the hand of God moving and it's going the right direction, because you lost your seat on the board.
But that will cut you off the knees if you don't pay attention to it.
Yeah. But I have seen what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Dealing with conflict is not easy.
No.
No matter where it is. Especially in the church.
Especially in church. Because there's a lot, and that's the biggest thing. A lot, because people that do ministry, that dig in deep with it, they invest a lot. They get a lot of their value out of the work of the ministry. They may have a job, but that's not what they value. They value their work in the church. For when you're in ministry, you live and drink this stuff all the time. And it's hard to get an idea, but that's, when you have that value and you invest so much into it, that can be good. It creates passionate people. But sometimes when you got to redirect them, they go, but wait a minute, I have this here, and it may not be tangible to you now, but to them it feels very tangible. I don't want to leave that. Mm-hmm. So then when you challenge that, you threaten that, they go, wait a minute, we don't get it. Again, the key is if you keep these, if you understand all those, your role again, you don't alienate them. That's what Pastor Moore's his mistake was. He alienated the older people. He learned from his mistakes, but that was when you alienate those people. If you alienate the younger people, you'll be in trouble. You'll be a lot of funerals, and church will be dying out and be an empty church quick. But you can't. You have. These are all the four groups that you have as a leader in ministry. You have to understand them. If you overlook it, you'll find yourself capped. Okay. Let's talk about the other two groups: senior newberries and senior newcomers. Those ministers who are older than the pastor or leader may respect his or her judgment in some areas, but because they have been around longer, they withhold judgment on other issues. They'll expect, they'll like, if a young guy who's got, it's kind of funny. It's kind of funny. A church will grow a lot when they get the right age pastor, to be honest with you. A guy 35 to 50, 45 can get picked up pretty quick. Because if he can communicate really well, that'll attract new people. That'll attract new families. That's what you got to do. But the problem is if you get some guys like 35, he's okay, and he starts and he's been married 5 years. He's speaking to a guy that's in his 50s, been married for 30 years. Ago, what do you got, kid? Whoop-de-doo. I got scars to prove you wrong. Now you can preach the gospel and speak biblically, sure. But they question things at points. And majority of stuff they accept, but there's some things they go, not so much. There's a lot of times we talk about it, when new ministers come in, they last 2 or 3 years because they don't get past this period of push and of leading. They can get some people come in the door, but then they can't transition and lead them forward because there's resistance to it. And understand these quadrants, understand these 4 groups is really important to that. Okay. So the senior newberries, they often the senior newberries, they have an issue themselves that they really care about. And they want the leader to care about it also. It could be whatever, but it's typically something that they really care about. And that could be, it's the senior newberries are people who come in, usually they have a passion about something. It could be about missions. It could be about, protesting against abortion clinics. It could be about, and if you value that, they agree with you. If you don't value that, they're like, okay, they won't stick around. Okay. The senior former berries. Oh, we talk about that. Then we talk about the last group, which is kind of they're most oblivious. The junior former berries, meaning they were there before you, but they're younger than you as a leader. They are children of the senior former berries. Okay, so they have mixtures of ideas. They like new, but then they have old stuff. And they can go either way. They get tossed around a little bit. So they're kind of the wild card in that group, of all of the 4 groups. They're really hard to peg. Sometimes it's kind of funny. And I've seen. Oh my gosh, it's hilarious. I'll hear them talk and go, "You sound like your father, dude." And they think they're being really hip with some stuff. I'm going, "You're not hip with nothing. It's just the same old stuff." And then they see, well, they've been around, but they said, "Well, I know this. I grew up in this. And why can't you see this?" And it's hard for them to, again, the world typically is a smaller world as far as the church is concerned. And change comes, like they have a tough time grasping because they think, well, we have this and this and this. And both the formers, they had great success in past. And they like that. Well, if we just redo this, it's so funny. They want to go back to what they did typically when they were teenagers. Because that was cool. Well, that's and it may have some value, but it may or may not hit the mark today. Just saying. So these navigating yourself through these four and not balancing that is really, really key. Like I said, when in the cathedral, they had this young guy. And the guy they had come in was a great communicator, probably one of the best preachers around. But he wasn't Southern, which is different for them because that was a very deeply Southern culture church. They didn't realize it, but they were with all kinds of issues, and they in that community that if you didn't understand, you'd have it was a shock for us to understand some like racial issues and so forth. It's very different down there than it is here. Down there the schools were segregated in '85. I had friends of mine that were contemporaries of mine. Their schools were segregated schools through most of their school age years. There was one school that was the school district south of us in a town called Port Arthur was taken over by the Fed because they did not segregate, and the Feds had to finally come and take over the school system. And they were just letting go of it before we left. If you guys remember back in, I went there 92 to 2000. No, I think here. 92 to 99, I was at Lakeside, Lakeshore. Then 99 to 2007, I was in Beaumont. Right in 99, there was this horrible dragging death in Texas, East Texas, Southeast Texas, Michigan, where they literally dragged a black man, some racist skinheads, dragged a black man behind the pickup truck till his head fell off. That was literally 30 miles north of Beaumont. The trial was in Beaumont. So racism was a big issue. There was a town. There's 3 cities. There's Beaumont, Port Arthur, and then there's can't think of the name of it now. I cannot think of the name of the town. It's just left me. Shoot. Well, Orange is the bigger city, but there's a little town outside of that, Orange, Vidor, Texas. And just until right for all that happened, they took it down. But there was a sign on the side of in Vidor. I don't know if it was an official sign or no, it wasn't an official sign, but someone put it up. It said, "Don't let the sun set on your black." There was a lot of Southern racial tension was huge there. Here in the North, just don't have a clue. But that was it was deep Southern culture. As someone comes to the North, you'd have a tough time understanding that. Again, it threw us off when we ran against it now and then. So when you try to change stuff, those stories behind and values behind and people just didn't want to go with it. And so let me give you an example how deep this ran. So you have that group of the older have different models of this. I'm going the wrong one. So older long-termers. Okay, so older long-termers. So we had a group of old long-termers. Again, at that church, I had a Sunday school of 450, 500. I got plaques. We're a large Sunday school. Okay, what to do? So we had these large Sunday school groups. I had 2 of them that had 50 in each of those classes. They're all older long-termers. All of them. So the pastor left. My pastor friend went in, stayed there for about 2 or 3 years, which I kind of guessed he would stay long. Then he left. And because his health kind of had some issues, and it was tough for him to keep going, so he stepped aside. He left, moved to San Antonio. They had another guy come in, Pastor Kitchens. Pastor Kitchens came from Florida, great preacher. He was Southern Baptist. He was Southern Baptist, converted and got the Holy Ghost and came to the Assemblies of God. Was a pastor Southern Baptist, First Southern Baptist Church in Bradenton, Florida, and then moved there, moved to Beaumont. Really on fire for God. I mean, he was really on fire for God. And so he did some things that all those old timers, they was kind of very Methodist Pentecostal group. They were very conservative. He did some stuff that was radical. He brought some great preachers, and we brought in Brownsville people. We brought people from Toronto Blessing, which is all these revival movements. We had all kinds of crazy, and they oh Lord, that was not cool. So they finally got tired of it, and they left. They found a guy to be the pastor, his guy from that church. And they left. Now it's called Christian Fellowship Church, about 450 across town. And they kind of just left the church after about 2 years. But it's so funny. The structure of the service is almost the exact same structure they did 30 years ago with Pastor Dabney. They kept all those same norms and stuff. They have a song they would sing, "A Family of God." They open up with that song to this day. So so Quick Kitchens left because the church in Florida asked him to come in. Okay, I want to go. You want to move back to Florida. So then Randy Felchuk came. He came from Brownsville. That's who I worked with him, and then he and I didn't get along too great, so I left. He decided he didn't want to keep up because he wanted to change everything, and he changed everything, but stuck in there long enough that the church is okay. He went from like 800 down to like 250. Now he's got about 500-600 in there now. But it's navigating these changes and conflict of ministry. You can change ministry. You can follow. That's why I'm teaching stuff now, because when you think about this matter, how you're going to do it, you have to understand. You have to communicate and connect with these people. If you don't, you'll cut yourself off the knees because they have those past histories. Okay, now in change. Okay, so you got the four quadrants. Then you got this. You got the past, the present, and the future, and then you got change and conflict. Past is the memory. Institutions live out of memory. Groups of people live out of memory. That is past. It's not bad, because out of your past, you have a testimony. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it still exists. You have the present and you have future. A leader has to identify past, present, future. What's the biblical context of that? In the book of Deuteronomy, Moses gets up on the side of the mountain and basically gives us a long series of sermons. It opens up where Moses on the side of the mountain, and he has because there's no sound system, right? And he's old. He's like 120. And he starts sharing the law all over again, retelling the stories of the Exodus again. And so he says it, one guy repeats it, another guy repeats it, another guy repeats it, and to millions. That's the book of Deuteronomy. It's retelling of the Exodus. Remember your past and God's faithfulness. There's nothing wrong with that. But you have to be in the present, and you have to have a hope, a future of going to the promised land. That's God's work in the church today. You have a past, you have a present, and you have a future. You have to balance all three of those. But with that, you have change, which is good, but there's tension there. But it's also bad with conflict, because people that are resistant to future. And going back to that, there's those four groupings of people could give you an idea of what's going on. Now, this is kind of funny part. Okay, me and Pastor Forner are sitting to talk about this stuff. We taught this at Kenosha. We taught it in Beaumont too. I said, the complication is this: you have the four things of past, present, future. Trying to move through that. Yep. Okay, cool. You have the four groups of people that you're trying to deal with. Yep, that's really cool. But within the four groups of people, you have different personality types. You have unstructured and structured. You have people-oriented and task-oriented. They want to relate to you differently. And you got to navigate all this stuff. You got to know who the influencers are. Jesus had, Peter, James, and John. He had Peter, James, and John, three dudes, and himself. Those three were going to carry the weight of the church more than the other 9. One was going to quit on him. But he knew that he had to deal with those three and invest in them the most. And each of those have a different personality. Then he had Paul later on. Paul's like Mr. Go for broke, get stuff done. Mr. Writer of all, writes like crazy person, preaches like crazy person, goes wherever he needs to go. And you got Peter, who drags his feet a little bit. Both called by God, different personalities. You got Barnabas, Mr. Love and Care. Paul wants to cut everybody off if they take him off too much. That's a very brief statement, but You have John, the writer of the gospel, who's Mr. Creative. All different personality. In ministry, we have to lead different personalities in those different groups and relate to them in different ways. We can't use one size fits all. So you have the process. You have the past, the present, the future. You have all three are of value. You have to be in the present, what's real today. You ever seen someone not in reality in ministry, trying to lead it? It's like they're like, oh, this and this. And I'm going, are you here right now? Hello, are you seeing what I'm seeing? Are you hearing what I'm hearing? Are you smelling what I'm smelling? Because it doesn't smell too good, okay? So you can be too much in future. I mean, it's so funny. I've seen it. I go, oh, man, I'll never forget. I'm going to say where the guy came from, where he went to. We were hosting an event here at the church. And he was a new guy in the area. Whenever I hear about a new guy in kids ministries, kind of doing the same stuff I do, I always got, hey, let's do some lunch, let's talk a little bit, let's kind of tell me your story type of thing. And he happened to be at the event, and it was an all-day event we hosted here. So I'm like, I'll hang out and talk to the guy. He's a new guy, I'll talk to him. And I'm talking with this guy. I'm going, this guy doesn't have a clue. But he thought he knew everything he needed to know. He just got his master's in church organization, something, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, cool. And from Bethel University outside St. Paul there. And I was talking to him about that. And he's like, this and this. He's like, yeah, this is how I view the church and kids ministries. I'm going, okay. And this and that. And I'm going, okay. And I just kind of left him going, scratch my head and go, I don't get this guy. Well, one of the more predominant churches in the Michigan became open. And I heard he took the church. I go, ooh. That's not going to go well. Because I knew the church. I've ministered there in kids ministries, Royal Ranger ministries, and JBQ stuff. And I knew about it. I go, it's a good church. I knew the pastor left it. He left and went to a kind of a different role and different phase of life and left in good shape. I go, boy, I don't know. And sure enough, we were hiring youth pastors. The guy that I need to get out of here. You guys got an opening? And no, and then and now they were without. I don't think they're with the pastor now because it all fell apart right before COVID. And it's just in shambles because the guy was way future, but he didn't want to. Because I was talking to him, I go, well, how do you connect with your parents, your people, that old timer thing? And he's like, I'm just gonna I think this, I know what my future is, and they just got to follow me. The problem is this. With that mentality, God has given vision. Do not deny that one in any way, shape, or form. That's what the role of the leadership is, to cast vision. But you still pastor all those people. You got to get their heart with your heart. That takes work. They're going to challenge you on it. That doesn't have to necessarily be bad. If you can meld your heart with their heart, you will win in huge ways. You will gain a partner like nobody's business. And I'm explaining how I've done this over the years. And when in Sunday school, when I came here to Lakeside, I'm a little bit different because I've been doing this for a few years. I'm kind of old. And so I sat down with all my Sunday school teachers. And again, I had master degree teachers and people, they all really smart, they're really good. And I proposed some new ideas of doing some things. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I said, well, that's what I'm thinking we're going to do. Now, first thing I did my first year, this is what I was telling everybody, your first year of ministry, don't change a whole lot. Just see what's going on. Listen. So then I thought, okay, we got to make some changes. And so what I did, I spent a year talking about the changes I want to do. And then, what do you think about it? They go, and they tell me how stupid it was, and they didn't think it was the right idea, and it's not okay. What's wrong with it? And we kept on working. Some things we tweaked, some things we kept, and we eventually made some changes. I still was working towards the vision I had, but I let them speak into it. Now those same people that bucked me from day one are probably if I ask them to do one thing for me, they're on like nobody's business. They're like, okay, what do you want? Okay, I'll do it. I'll make it happen. Because there's that connection. And I've learned that over the years. If I connect with those, old timers, and I hear them out, and I listen to them, and I pastor them. I shepherd them. When they have an issue, I listen. When I'm in a hospital, I show up. When they ask for a prayer request, I pray for them. Right there, right then. Not, I'll pray for you later. No, do it then. There's a value in that. Our jobs as ministry leaders is to lead all of them. Not those that we like, to think that we're the best thing since sliced bread. That's a big fat lie, okay? You're not that good. Okay. So I start talking about this and I have some point. So so you have all these different personalities, the structured, unstructured, task-oriented, people-oriented. Now I could get in personality types and all that fun stuff, and there's some validity to all that stuff, but there's some things, like what's the Enneagram. I'm like, I'm a B9. I go, and they're great, but understand it's not. It's not all. It's not for sure. And what's great, but I love all these personality systems. It gets you to think about it and talk about it, and helps us as leaders kind of help identify how people think and feel. Okay, if they're task oriented or they're structured or unstructured or whatever, how do I relate to them? Are they people oriented or not? Okay, I don't take a people oriented person that's not unstructured and put them as a tech person in the sound booth. Shoot myself in the head. I mean that I put them out in the foyer to greet people. Winner, chicken dinner. I'll have them teach a class. Whatever. I'll take those. I don't want to get in front of people, but I love technology stuff. Okay, go run my video, do my sound stuff. Okay, cool. But I don't make them do that. I mean, whatever fits their personality. That's kind of your fitting and call and all that kind of stuff. So, but then how you relate to them is differently. Again, a strong social people-oriented person, they want me to hang out with them a little bit. The task-oriented person, they want to see me get stuff done. That's a booger. It's true. If I don't get stuff done, the task-oriented go, well, what value are you to me? People, if you don't, I believe it or not, you guys think, really? I've gotten a lot better about this. Because in my nature, I'm task-oriented. I know that's a big surprise for you guys, for some of you guys. Okay? So in my early days of ministry, I would be like, because I did kids and so forth. If I was walking through the foyer, people would say hi to me, and I wouldn't know what. I'm like on target, locking in. I'm got my thing to do, and I still get in those modes, But that would tick people off. They get mad at me. They go, Rosemary, because Rosemary's, she'll talk to everybody. She's sweet and kind. Is Randy mad at me? She's like, no. Well, he's just an idiot, okay? You gotta give him some grace. Slap him, make him say hi to you, and he'll do that, okay? So, because now some guys say, some guys, Randy's getting stuff done. Yeah, that's good. I'm like, yeah, I'm getting stuff done. And they'll be like, he didn't talk to me. Well, I gotta talk to those people. That's hard to do. Well.
I'm doing something.
Huh?
I'm doing something.
It's written now. And over time, I've learned over the years. If they really want to talk, they go. And since doing the counselor thing, they go. People want to do the counseling, but then I go, whoa, make an appointment and talk to me. I do two things. One, if they come, they want to have do a session right then. I go, no, we'll make an appointment and we'll do that. And sometimes they don't make the appointment. Okay. Or I get a phone call. Hey, I heard you counsel people. Can I come see you? Do you come to church here? Or they kind of come and go, come to church on Sunday and talk to me. We'll set an appointment. Guess what? Most don't even show up on Sunday. So okay. Anyways, that's a whole thing. Anyways. So understanding that is really key. If you don't balance, again, the guy that, going back to Beaumont, and the guy that followed the guy, Pastor Dabney, I can't remember his name anymore now. What his problem was, he would preach on Sunday. He would leave right after preaching and go to his office. He wouldn't greet anybody. He wouldn't greet anybody before service or after service. Now, before service, I kind of get it. You try and get your message in. You got to preach really good. Again, he's a really great preacher. But he had no people skills. And down in southern Texas, you better sit down and talk and chat. And it's a whole different mentality down there. So that one simple thing that he would not spend time in the foyer greeting people after service hurt him more than anything else. His task didn't care for the people. That itself was probably the biggest thing caused me the most. Now, Pastor Forner was opposite. He would spend, he was probably not the best preacher, but he'd spend all the time talking to you. He was very pastoral. And he took that church, he knew he really had to step his preaching game. It was really tough. But he managed that. But then, he had some health issues and so forth. Okay, so you have these 4 quadrants of people. You have the different personality types that go into it. Now, okay, behind the conflict is a story. Oftentimes, when you see conflict, we see. My screen here. You see the wall here. This is the thing that we see, and that's it. We don't see anything else beyond it. The accusation, the problem, the screaming person at us, the whatever. You oftentimes all we see is anger, emotion. That like, oh, this is scary. Why are you getting this mad? Or we get defensive, and we'll talk about it a little bit later. But behind those things is this whole dynamic of a story. Why? Why are they so upset when you say, let's try this, let's change something? Why do they get so upset about that? What's the story behind it? It can be very much in the past, be very much to value. But there's a story there, and you have to spend some time to hear it. Behind every conflict is a story. You may not like it, you may not understand it, but there's a thought and a feeling, and there's a story behind it. If you spend time to work, because like I said, when Pastor Form would do these mediation things, he'd go in. We would spend 2 days. It's a lot of work. He would bring in people in groups, and he did them by the quadrants. He would organize them by the newcomers, long-termers, older, and junior, and have them share their stories. And we'd literally write down. I wouldn't write because my handwriting's horrible, but I'd type away notes. Ruth, his wife, would be writing down notes, and then we put all that together, and you would create those 2 big narratives and find out the values, what was missed, and then could this be repaired? Because sometimes it gets so vicious. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. It gets so vicious, someone loses. When I was in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and we left. Okay, so Pastor Forno left. Went to Beaumont. We went to an interim period for a year. Then he had me come down and be on staff with him down there. So I left. The youth pastor decided he wanted to be a senior pastor, so they voted him in. Okay. Got these different people. He had one gentleman who was on the board. I was on staff when this guy came back. The guy used to be he used to be the Christian education director at the church, probably a decade before I came. Okay, left, did some business stuff on his own, and worked at the church. And he consulted and helped another church in town, bigger church in town. So he left, and then he came back. Now again, he's probably about my age now, like 50 years old or whatever. I was in my 30s back then. And so he always had great ideas for me about running my Sunday school department, because he knew so much better. And of course, when he ran it, and him and this other guy, long-termers, they ran Sunday school like way better than we did at that point. And so they would always tell me how I could fix it and how I could do it. And me and my Sunday school superintendent. My Sunday school superintendent was a pretty sharp guy. He was like I don't know what his rank was in the Navy, but he worked at Great Lakes Base, and he was a really sharp guy, and he knew his stuff. He's a great Sunday school superintendent, a great leader, and a really sweet heart. And he's also an elder of the church. And became a good friend. And so he gets so ticked at him. He goes, "Oh my gosh, he's giving us all these stupid ideas, and that's so old." And I go, "I know, just let it go." And so we go at it and all that fun stuff. And so after a while, I got kind of tired of this. Then the same guy came. We opened a daycare childcare center. First daycare childcare center we ever opened was at Lakeshore. But me and Rosie were young and stupid. We didn't know what we were doing. And we got this idea. Let's open up for infants all the way through for 4th grade. It'll be great. There's this big demand for it. Well, there was big demand, but it was hard to make money at it and cover the cost. And so it really had a tough time breaking even. And we got a team in there and helped us figure out. We got to figure out how to be smart with it. We made some changes, and we're starting to get on the back track. Well, this guy got on the board, and he became real critical of the daycare. He saw us money loser. We need to get rid of it. So basically, he was the force behind shutting down the daycare center, which crushed Rosemary. Okay, and then Pastor Fernal left. I mean, the Pastor Fernal left. Like 2 months later, they decided to shut down the daycare center. And I'm like, okay, so that's great. So we left. Well, this guy still stayed on the board. Youth pastor comes on. Youth pastor's the same age as me. Camp comes in, starts leading the church, and doing pretty good. Gets young families in because he's a young guy. That whole starts working really good. They're rocking really good. And this whole thing starts happening with this one guy. He more critical. He's the old timer trying to tell him what to do, and they constantly have contention. And it gets worse and worse and worse. The pastor's reaction, though, to him was not really great. Lost his cool more than once. Said some things he shouldn't have said. He had a history of that before he came to us. We knew about it. When we interviewed him to pick the youth pastor, he lost the youth pastor position because he sent an email criticizing the pastor because he got ticked off at him, and that email went out to everybody, and he lost his job. And so we knew he had a hot head. We thought, okay, maybe he's going to grow out of that, be better. We brought him on, and then we left. He got hot-headed, caused problems. Well, what happened was, okay, this is what happened. So the church continues on. The guy that was a problem, it all of a sudden comes out because the business administrator from the church in town, which was Kenosha First Assembly of God, the church was like 2,000, and they had a huge school, comes over and says, I got to talk to you guys. Can I talk to your elder board? Sure. Well, I got to tell you about this guy. Basically, the guy embezzled like hundreds of thousands of dollars from the school and church. But they didn't want to prosecute him because they didn't want to be embarrassed by it. But they thought they should let us know about it because they had heard that he was on our board. He gets let go. They kick him out. They basically kick him out of the church. But the guy that became the senior pastor was left the church 6 months later because of the way he handled the conflict. He lost integrity, and he couldn't lead the church. And now I think he works for a bank now. He's not in ministry. That happens a lot. And a lot of guys get in these deep conflicts in churches. They just don't lose the church, they lose the ministry as a whole. Because they see that conflict, they never get behind the stories. They get so focused on that, and there's these attitudes, and I will talk about some things which you can do yourself later on about that. Okay. The biggest thing that I think you should need to do, this is based on all my stuff, develop systems of listening. The biggest frustration of any group of people is not being heard. If they don't feel heard, again, when I sit down with my long-termers, I hear what they value, and I wait till I know that they hear what I'm saying. I understand what they're saying. I get it. Okay, cool. I don't necessarily do what they want me to do, but they know I value what they have to say. If you do that, it works out really well. Now, that takes time. There's informal ways to do that. I'll take my glasses off so I can't see it. Home visits are good ways to do it. As far as saying a pastor can do any further, or a leader can do in taking over ministry, youth ministry, kids ministries, church, whatever, is getting people's homes. Today, that's really hard because it's just a weird thing to do. We're so isolated. If you can, it's great, but then go to the ball games, go to hang out with them in their natural environments. Okay. Now a lot depends on culture. Like around here, it's hard to do home visits and do stuff like that. In Texas, I learned really quick. I get a phone call. Hey, what you doing? I'm at my desk. I'm just working. You want to get coffee? Sure. And we go to McDonald's, get a cup of coffee. And this would happen. I get a phone call. Hey, come to my office. Let's do lunch. Okay. I would do lunches 3 days out of the week. Coffees, I can't tell you how many times. Twice a day would not be uncommon. I have a lot of coffee. And not great coffee either, but I have a lot. Down there, they put chicory in their coffee. That's a thing. Put chicory in it's coffee beans and chicory. So, but I had a lot. But see, it depends on. But that was how they did from in some churches. In Kenosha, they'd have you over for dinner, and you'd have coffee, you'd have dessert. So after Sunday, go out to eat. After Sunday night church, go out to eat. Service would start at 6 o'clock. You go by 7. You go out to get pie someplace, or dinner, or pizza. Very informal. But you want to connect to different groups. Yes.
Now, is that on the church or is that on
Oh, who
you?
pays for it?
Yeah.
Depends. And
If
like
you're going out to lunch every day, I mean,
at Cathedral, I was like, I was like, 'cause what happened? I go to church and Bob, what's Bob's name now? I can't forget his name now. I can't remember. He was a business administrator at the church. He pulls me to us, and he was a good old boy. He goes, no, now Randy, with the southern Texas drawl. Now Randy, you're gonna get phone calls to go out for lunch. When they call you, you go. I don't care what you're doing. You go to lunch. They call you for coffee, you go out for coffee. They call you to come meet them at the office, you go meet them at the office. I go, okay. Because now if you have to pick up the tab, do not worry about it. We'll take care of it. He goes, odds are you will never pay for lunch, you never pay for coffee. But if they call you, you go. Okay. So the culture was there. If I picked up the tab, I picked up the tab. Oftentimes, though, most people don't want the pastor to pay. They want they want to pay for it. That's my most experience. And then it's you gotta be careful. Your own when it's not your own personal budget. Like we would go out to Jason's Deli, which is a big with all the families and stuff and the kids and all that and stuff. And it was always on our own. But we kind of built that in a budget. We kind of say we can do and budget wise. Okay, we can do this much. We can go out once a week with the families, and we do that. So now we try to do like one big event at the house a year, big barbecue thing. That's expensive. The church pays for a good portion of that, but that still costs our own pocket. So it depends. But you got to kind of figure it out. So yeah, you got to be wise with it and be get said, okay, what can we do here? If they say come to Florida with us on vacation, no, I can't do that. But then I bet I'll never forget. I get a phone call. There are two guys, and one guy was literally he's a billionaire. The other guy, his family owned the land assets, the mineral rights to half the county. In South Texas, that's a lot of money. And so I'd go to his office and we go hang out in the office. He became the church business administrator down the road too, but he's a neat guy. Billy Dornbos, he and I have same birthday. Anyways. But so it just when I came here, that lunches because the way they work and how they do it, you can't really do that here. It's just different culture, different demographic. So we would do I would do a lot of I would sit the reason I would after services. All the parents would go back to the kids' church. I would sit down, me and Rosie would talk to all the families. Rosie knew everybody, all the kids, all the stories, knew who they were, what their boo-boos were, what their issues were, and that was a big part of that. So we do more here than we do outside of here. Beaumont was different. So again, each culture is different. You got to find that neat, unique culture. Team meetings, getting people together and talking about ideas and sharing ideas. Now the thing is, they're not like we're going to do this. What do you think about this? It's open-ended. You can do a formal, what you call discovery meetings, which is like, okay, you get 10 people together, again, 4 quadrants, get them all together. What do you guys think about this? They go, oh, that's a really good idea. Then hear the stories, hear the values. Okay, kick it around. And then, the new people, get them all together. There's a fun thing that we do is, I'll do a team meeting. I call it a creative team meeting. Now, so, okay, we want to fix this. We want to do this issue. I need 100 ideas before we go. And they all give me 100 ideas. We place them all over the wall and all that stuff, and review, critique them and all that stuff, and then you got something. And it's kind of fun. We do that, a group of people. If you come up with like 10 ideas, 5 of those ideas, people that were in that meeting will pick that idea up and do it for you, which is great. Because they're a part of the process. So those type of things, brainstorm meetings, discovery meetings, just talking about the ideas. It's again, formalized, informal. You have to spend time doing that. It takes time. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years in ministry context. Like I said, I don't know where I learned it, but when I was in Bible, I know I learned it. When I was in Bible college in Minneapolis, I was the children's church director, which meant they paid me gas money for Eden Prairie Assembly of God, which was like outside Minneapolis. And I interned there. We attended there for several years, got to know the pastor and all that fun stuff. And it was going to happen. My life has been, I see more transitions, except until I came here. I was the senior pastor. We had a kids pastor for like 10 years. He decided he was done doing ministry and stepped aside. And I was so they said, okay, can you run this? I go, sure, why not? I'll do it. We'll do it. So we had a cool team of young kids and college kids, and we did it. It was a lot of fun. And the senior pastor said, okay, how much longer till you graduate? You interned here. How much longer you got till you're done? I go, I got like another year. He goes, okay, I'll tell you what. When you graduate, unless something really changes, you can have the job. I'll pay you a salary. I'll pay you like $40,000, Is that benefits? Cool. I go, winner, chicken dinner. Well, somewhere in between that time, that was like the summer, June, and then by January, he decided to take a church in Wisconsin, Brookfield. And so I'm going, well, you don't get hired in as, so he left. And they went through an interim period. They hired, so it was a whole thing. But during that time, we had a guy by the name of Tom Gazelle. Tom was like the district, worked in the district office, was a great Christian education guy, became like the senior associate at the church. And basically, he was like my mentor. He was a great mentor. He taught me a lot. He taught me, when you first go to church, don't do anything your first year. Listen, do stuff. He taught me a lot of that. And so I went to Kenosha, waited a year, and started doing changes, doing stuff, and changing stuff over time. Same thing here, okay? Got ideas, change stuff. But listening is really important. Taking that time. And it takes 1 to 2 years to do so. That's why I can never get, why would you leave quicker than, 5 years or less is kind of stupid. Because you're not going to get a whole lot done. You're just going to, you're just spinning wheels. Anyways. Okay, let's talk about this. The greatest change agent is the Holy Spirit. It's not you. It's not me. It's the Holy Spirit. So number one, you better know what the Holy Spirit is leading. It takes time to do that. And God confirms it. Now, when the Lord led Paul and Barnabas to begin the missionary journey, it was confirmed by the church. And that church, because they confirmed them, invested in them heavily. They were their base. So there's a lot of power in that. When they were sent with confidence and clarity. But that took time of prayer, intercession, seeking. When you think about, Gordon Anderson used to be the president of North Central, back when university now was Bible college back in the day. He did a whole research thing in all major revivals in Pentecost movement and before that in North American culture over history. Took 2 years of serious prayer, not just little like a week of prayer, which I love a week of prayer. Don't think I'm critical of it anyway, but like real digging in prayer for 2 years, and then you may see revival break. Most churches don't see revival because they don't want to make that investment. So if you want to lead change and the Holy Spirit to invest in that, you better invest in prayer and hearing yourself and then moving forward. Pray before. I think leaders taking time off for 40 days of prayer and fasting or not fasting to make a difference. This focused prayer is real important. Season of corporate prayer, working through it, walking through it. You pray during. Corporate prayer, focused prayer groups, ways to facilitate it. Getting creative with it is real important of it. And praying after you start it all, because guess what? It's not going to be easy. It's a constant process. You can't pray enough. You can't seek the Holy Spirit enough. We can come up with all the plans, all the ideas, but you're totally dependent upon the leading of the Holy Spirit. And that is the greatest change agent. It changed the disciples into the church, and it's continually changed the church to become the church it is today. And that is a powerful tool. It will change leaders. It will change the hearts of those that go against you. It will move people away from you that you need to be moved. It will weed out those before you even realize they need to be weeded out. Whenever I've come across something long term, and it's like I'm trying to see change, and I think this is what God wants me to do, and I'm facing strongholds against it, I was okay. What do you want me to do, Lord? And I was okay. Then sometimes you got to pause, because change is pushing against the status quo, and sometimes it can be pushed easily. Sometimes there's resistance to it. Okay, when we push it in our own strength, you're going to get really tired really quick. But if you pause, hold, and allow the Holy Spirit to work, it's amazing what can happen. But you have to be patient and dependent upon that. And that takes seeking His face, seeking His heart, really working through. Okay? The last point I want to make is when in conflict, check yourself. When you find yourself in conflict, there are 4 things I find leaders really, really mess up on a personal level. Number one, am I perceived as being critical? You may not be intended to be critical, but you're perceived as critical. The old timers, when you want to make a change, they think, why change it? What's wrong with what we've always done? Why are you criticizing this? Just changing it comes off to them as criticizing it. And because they have a story behind it, why it is, why they did it, what it is. And there may be some real value to it, or may just be, well, we've always done this way. We don't know why, but we just do it. But there's something to it. Memory, change. I mean, we've done a $4 million, no, $6 million. I don't know how much. This building project has been millions of dollars. Know what's been the biggest issues that we've had to deal with? The pews and chairs. More people have commented about the pews and chairs, pews or chairs, than anything else. I've had more people say, "Well, what about this? What about that?" Because what? But they're more worried about where they put their blessed assurance than anything else. I don't know. I just don't get it. And now it's kind of funny. They're all in there and they're all sitting there going, "This is pretty good. We like this." It gives a great example of change. Because again, I was like, pews are fine with me. I'm okay with it, whatever. But the seats, there's just a lot of value to the seats. But there's some like, Pastor Randy, I don't want to make a statement to anybody, but Pastor Randy, I want to let you know. Okay, what?
Can you imagine the fires that pastor has to put out on Monday over pews?
No. Well, when we had the samples out in the foyer, just like 3 years ago. Well, the board got the idea. Okay, we'll put them out there. They can try them out. Too rock, too hard, too soft. It was like, okay, but that was the biggest thing. And if the pastor Pastor got a phone call from someone that was saying, Pastor, just before we open up, have the grand open, people are upset about it, and this and that, and just a few people talking, that whole thing, and they're all old timers. Now, the power of longevity. Pastor's been here 30 years, over 30 years now. There's very few people, old timers, that are around anymore. He himself is an old timer, which has a lot of power to it. You can make a lot of changes. But when you come in new, and they feel again, you're making a change to something. You think, well, this makes sense to you, but they feel criticized. Again, it was not intended, but that's you got to think. It's where the Holy Spirit's got to prick your ears a little bit. Am I hearing that they feel criticized, or what was? Don't you never criticize your predecessor or predecessors.
Never is right.
Because guess what? Somebody got saved under that ministry.
And they love it.
They could have been a complete idiot and jerk. Could have robbed the church, come and sleep with the secretary. But guess what? Don't criticize your predecessor. Because someone was affected by the ministry. Yeah. And if you make a change, they feel it's criticizing the predecessor. Who led them to the Lord. Prayed for him in the hospital. Whatever that story is. So when you find yourself in conflict, are you being perceived as being critical? That may not be intention. That's a great place. I don't need that. But then why? What's the story behind it? Number 2, am I being defensive? Defensive, when we're defensive, we listen less and talk more. You ever hear the old saying, you have 2 ears, 1 mouth, use them proportionally? We don't listen really well because defensive, you don't admit fault. Good leadership can say, I made a mistake. I made some big, huge, this is awesome. I'll never forget this. Not too long, no, it was a while ago. Probably my second year or so. I get called in a pastor's office. A new dad came in to talk with the pastor, okay? He goes out in the office, I'm just doing my stuff in the office. I'm just doing, say hi to the guy who walks in. He's got a new guy, hey, how you doing? And 10, 15 minutes later, pastor walks up, Randy, come here. I'm going, what's up? So the guy tells me, he goes, well, I was in your kids' church, and some video was playing on the video, and it had demons on it, and this and that. I thought that was just totally inappropriate for kids. When the guy told Pastor the story, Pastor's like going, I don't know how Randy would never do. I mean, Rose would probably kill him if he would do something like that. And he goes, he goes, I'm thinking, there's just no way, you know. And the guy's telling me this, I'm thinking in my head, I go, what is he talking about? Because before service, we would play music videos. Back then, they did WOW, remember the WOW Christian CDs and so forth. They basically, the top 10 of the year or whatever, and they played the videos. And I still show some of those in kids' church because, the kids don't know the difference. Aaron picks them because they're old, but whatever. But what they would do, they'd have the top 20, Christian stuff, and they would show some of there was one group called Red. It was really it was more like teens, adults. It wasn't for kids, but it was at the end of the DVD. And my son, we were busy talking to the kids and saying, doing our stuff. We weren't paying attention to what was on video. And Ben, my son, was he ran the media back then. He didn't catch it that video played. And I thought, so this guy's something. All of a sudden, the light goes, and I go, oh, that's what it was. It was this video, and it was not made for kids, but it was on the DVD, and it just didn't get caught, and no one caught it. And I said, it was a mistake. I'm sorry. When you say, man, I made a mistake, I'm sorry. Whoever's mad at you, you deflate them right then and there. It's just awesome. It's cool. You don't go, I didn't do this. I did anything wrong. And I cannot tell you, people in ministry who get defensive and don't take responsibility when they make a mistake. I've seen the good and the bad and the ugly. And I've seen people out of ministry because of it, because you lose integrity. Because even though you don't see it, you don't understand it, everyone else does. Again, when I was in Kenosha, I'm so smooth. I tell you guys, we had a kids choir. The kids choir, we have Great Lakes Crossing. Well, the mother of that mall is in Gurney, Illinois. I can't think of the name of it now, but it's Gurney Mills. Huge mall. Oh yeah, okay, yeah. So we're at Gurney Mills. Our kids choir singing at Gurney Mills. A little kids production they did, Christmas production. So we go out there, we do the whole thing, and one of the kids who had a lead part was supposed to be there, and somewhere she told me real quick, and her mom didn't tell me, but she told me that she wasn't going to be able to make that production, and someone else had to do the part. And or we're going to, and I said, okay, we won't do that section or that song or whatever. You'll do something else. Well, I didn't write it down. I totally forgot about it. So she comes in on Sunday. That was Saturday, and Sunday we go, okay, you can't do this now. You can't, you weren't there, so you can't do your song. She's like 10. She falls apart. She pulls it out. Now, this is how smooth I am. This was one of my deacon's kids. I'm so smooth. I'm so smart. So his mom, the deacon, he stood probably 5'6", about 5'6". His wife stood like 6 foot. So, yeah, this is kind of that whole thing. And so she comes in to talk to me about this. I go out and I'm going, well, I said, remember she goes, yes, but do you remember on this date? And she quoted the date. And she told you this? I'm going, oh, shoot, I don't believe I did that. She goes, yes. I said, I'm sorry. And I looked to the ground, and I was sitting in my chair, I looked right, I go, I made a big mistake, and I should have not done that. And, I haven't made it right. Well, so the mom was, she was ready to roll the bear. And I said, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, and I realized what I did because I'm an idiot. And so she's like, and she walks out, she's like, and I didn't know this, but later on, so we opened the daycare center, and she was like the cook for the daycare. She was a great cook, and her and her husband were real great supporters and great people, and taught ministries with us, and he was like one of my key ranger leaders and all this kind of stuff. She told me, when you did that, I thought I was gonna have a drag out, kick out fight with you, and when you said that you admitted to your mistake, I don't know what to do with it. But reality was, I won her trust that way. Again, great support of our ministry, dear friends and all that stuff. So, it makes a big difference. So, being defensive doesn't do any good. Okay? And number two, am I ignoring the conflict? Ignoring the conflict, you walk away from the person, you see them in the hallway, you go, I go over here, I go over there. Because in ministry, you can avoid conflict pretty easily. You can dodge that bullet all day long. You can dance it. But guess what? It's going to hurt you one way or the other. You avoid certain people. You avoid certain committee meetings. You dodge the bullet, or you strong arm it. I am. You are, and that's what we're going to do. There's a role for that when someone's being biblically out of line. But you better check yourself and make sure that's the case. It's far better to to deal with it straight up. Now there's avoiding the conflict is a form of stonewalling. Stonewalling can be two forms. Externally, you blow up. You use power. You scream a lot. You throw a fit. That happens in relationships. Or you just ignore it, which is another but doesn't do any good. But it doesn't take away the issue. And that becomes cancerous after a while. The last thing is, do I have contempt for the other person? Have you demonized them? When I talk to people in ministry, and they go, you would not believe what I got to deal with. And the terminology they use, they demonize the person. Now, is that possible? Sure, it's possible. But what's the biblical view of the soul? What does Christ want to do in that person's life? Is that bringing redemption? Again, it goes back to judgment cycles. And you have to really check your heart. Because of these things, I know a lot of people, they do ministry, they're very, very guarded. Long term, you can get because you've gotten beat up so much, vulnerable, maybe beat up, and when you made yourself vulnerable and accused of. I never forget when I was in a board meeting down in Kenosha. And this is during the interim period. It's part of the daycare was being reviewed and all that stuff. And I had a staff member who I was on staff that whole time. We were friends and hung out with each other. He was the pastor for quite a while and became the worship pastor. He looked, and we're in the board, and he leans up, he goes, now, Randy, I want to know if you're embezzling money from the church, from the daycare. I go, this is my friend? This is the guy I went to after his firstborn was born. I was like the first person at the hospital. And he's accused me of embezzling money, which I could do a lot of stupid things, but I would never mess with money. I get. When some people, like kids, in kids' church, put like $1 in my pocket for an offering, and I forget about it. I put it in special places, and I make sure it gets back to the church. It's $1, but
you live with yourself.
Yeah. And this guy's accused me of embezzling money. It was unique because we're in a meeting having this conversation. And he says that I'm on. Just kicked me and just kicked. I didn't tell Rosemary about it for like a month later. And it was I was as much as that moment hit, I'm like totally just wiped out by that one comment. And then I was kind of like balanced out with it because the treasurer was in the meeting, and and his name was Lauren Sparks. Lauren goes, "That's the most stupidest thing I ever heard." No. He goes, we have these systems in place. Randy and Rosemary don't really handle any of the money at all, really. The money comes in a certain way, and all he oversees the budget type of stuff, but they don't actually handle the funds. It's like, no, not a big deal. It's like, this is the most stupid. He goes, no, I see every single penny that goes in and out there. No one's embezzling money. It's just the business side of it. He goes, you're an idiot. You have a thing going, okay, Lauren's on my side. Yay! Which, that made a big difference. But you can have those moments, and I could have gotten totally defensive. I probably would have, I'd kind of shut down. I don't know what to say at that point. Sometimes you get kicked in the teeth. Just recently, I was in a church conflict, but someone within the church, someone outside the church called me racist lately. This past week. Okay, whatever. Sorry you feel that way. I didn't do anything wrong, but you irritate people sometimes. You run across stuff and you're like, what? Why? And how you respond is huge in that moment of conflict. But I find these 4 things: criticism, defensiveness, ignoring the conflict, stonewalling it, and contempt. Contempt, when you start getting contempt, when I talk to someone of a church, I'll never forget about this. I'm doing a funeral for my friend. His wife passed away. They've been friends with ours for 30 years. We went to Bible college together. We stood in each other's weddings. She died of cancer last month, so I'm doing the wedding. I'm doing the funeral on Saturday. Jeff was at a church downriver in Taylor. And I'll never forget, we come into town and talk and so forth. And when we get together, it's kind of funny. We were down in Texas for a while, then we moved back up here. And we interviewed here. They met us over here at, I think we did Cece's Pizza with the kids and stuff. And it was like us, when we get together, it's like, we haven't missed a beat. And we kind of talk and we're cool and all and stuff. And but Jeff was down he's in Howell. He's been in Howell for almost 25 years now. And before that, he was in church in Taylor. Well, he got a lot of contempt towards the senior pastor, the leadership. He was really kind of done. And I'll never forget, he's like going off and off and off and off and off. I'm going, dude, quit. Just go. You got to get out of here quick. Because he was just rolling. I go, if you keep on going, you're going to lose out of ministry. Because that contempt, because if you have that view towards one, you can have that view towards another. Then where does redemption come into play? How are we vehicles of God's grace, redemption, and truth? That will kill you in ministry. It's hard to do. Because people say horrible things. No truth to it. But it doesn't matter. But how we react to it really determines where we're going to go with it. Okay? We're going to stop here for now. That's enough. Get my mouse to work in. All right. Next week, I can't remember what the topic is going to be next week. Well, next week, we're going to get into, everybody have a copy of this book?
Yeah.
So, dig into this a little bit, because this will be a key thing with all this. Chapters 1 through 3. It's about prayer life, the kind of core stuff of pastoral ministry. We'll talk about that a little bit. And we'll dig into that next week. Okay? Switch now to the Acts 2 stuff. And then we get the AG Polity, which is going to be fun.
Do we need a copy of the bylaws?
That you get online. Go to ag.org, and it's all online.